I was born completely deaf, and I didn't get diagnosed with a hearing loss until the age of 4 in kindergarten. And when I was diagnosed, they told my mom that I wasn't going to ever really be able to hear or really do anything with my life, basically. So my mom immediately left that doctor's office and went to the doctor's office that I'm at now, and they gave me 2 hearing aids and taught me how to speak, basically, and taught me how to, do the best that I could, and basically rebuilt on my skills of reading lips and speaking, and continued on. And then last Christmas I got implanted with a cochlear implant and was able to hear for the first time, and was able to pair what I had learned in those therapy sessions with what I was hearing last Christmas for the first time.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Weird.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
What does it sound? What does it sound like?
High pitched.
Yeah, you sound like Donald Duck.
Yeah.
He sounds like Donald Duck.
Yeah.
Can you keep turning it up?
I will. Yeah.
That sounds really weird.
1, 2, 3, and I'll just talk to you here, and we'll just slowly turn it up. I don't want it to be too loud or uncomfortable for you. You don't have to try to tough it out or anything like that, because we can slowly turn it up over the first few days that you have it. So I'll just talk to you here.
Okay.
Is that
It's just like, I feel it now, but it's like really far away.
Yeah.
Like I can't hear it, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
My feelings when I first got my cochlear implant was just how thankful I was that I was able to actually receive it and to hear. It was great that, to be able to hear, just so much, because I mean, I've always heard really, really loud noises, but just to hear the wide spectrum of noises. The first thing that I heard that scared the crap out of me was a toilet flushing. And I didn't really know how to react to that, but I was just so happy, and it just completely changed my life from the day that I got activated.
Well, I grew up in a mainstream program. Did not interact with deaf people till I was 18. I always sat in the front of the classroom, read the lips of the instructor, didn't have an interpreter. I would have to read the assignments and depend on that, and after class I would go up to the teacher and ask the teacher what things I needed to study for, what things I needed to look at. So, that helped me to be a good student and to study. And then when I graduated high school, and that's when I started associating with the deaf community and using sign language. I hadn't experienced that before. I remember it was really limited, not understanding everything that was said with hearing people. I remember, I would just, have to laugh in unison with others, but with the deaf community, it was actually humorous. I knew what they were talking about, and so there was the communication avenues just opened up. It was great. But I'm part of the hearing world and the deaf world too.
I feel that the question as to whether I'm deaf or hearing is a really difficult question to answer, because whenever I remove my cochlear implant, I cannot hear a thing. But when you put it on, I'm immediately immersed into the hearing culture. So it's kind of a mix between the two. But if I had to pick one, I would go ahead and go with hearing.
Well, now for me, I grew up in a mainstream program and I had an interpreter. I originally started in a deaf ed classroom, a self-contained classroom, used sign language there. And then I was transferred to another district, and then I had an interpreter full-time, and so I knew that I would have to work twice as hard as a hearing student, because they could hear. For me, I had to use my eyes, use my interpreter, couldn't write notes, and watch the interpreter. So I'd find individuals that would take notes for me. But, I got used to that, so I don't see that as a problem for me. But there are frustrations I experience from time to time because the communication is not there. I don't get all the information that I would like to have.
I grew up in a deaf school, so I have a complete deaf world, and either the teacher is deaf or hearing, but they knew sign language. So the student for us in the class at my classmates, we were all deaf, and so we grew up just like brothers and sisters. Communication was easy. My boys, my family are all deaf, and I have 3 sons that are all deaf. All of them have experience going to mainstream school. My wife as well. Well, I want to talk about my boys, those 3. They said that there are positives and negatives, but really the weight is more negative because oftentimes there's loneliness because you see a lot of people that are hearing kids playing together, trying to fit in, trying to join and play, but they're looking at you like, they don't want you there because of difficulty in communication.
Well, it's sometimes it's a little awkward. I don't want to use my speech, and so I try to write. And now, if the hearing person's interested or interesting and wants to learn, then I'm open to that. But if they show an interest, then I'm interested, because they're willing. Some of them it doesn't make any difference. So, and then eventually you meet hearing people now that know sign language that are interested. So that makes it easier.
Well, I'm lucky enough that I've got to learn how to sign. I'm in a deaf education program at my school. And they encouraged me to get involved in the deaf community. It's hard to explain until you get into it. It's really a family. You know a lot of different people. You see someone at different deaf events, and you usually know them by face if you don't know them personally by name. They look out for their own. It's really a community inside of Oklahoma City. So it's really great to get to be a part of it.
For this state, we cherish our culture and our community. We have events and activities, as many as we can, like the Deaf Coffee Chat. The State Fair has a Deaf Awareness Day, and we try to set up different organizations across the state that deaf people can attend to go to and educate hearing people. Of course, the deaf community cherishes their language, American Sign Language, and encourage hearing people to be involved with that. An organization that I'm involved with right now is called Project Nadine, and right now I'm currently president and CEO of that organization in teaching hearing people what we all called autism, the impression of deaf people, so we see in the state that we cherish the deaf community quite a bit.
Like I've said, it depends upon the individual. Some person are easy, they're warm, open-minded, and then I can relate to them. Some people probably feel nervous and they feel awkward and they're real silent, and then I realize that, and it's an awkward moment, and so I just leave them and wait.
I remember the first time I went to meet a deaf person at a Starbucks, just like tonight. I was nervous, my hands were shaking, I couldn't make my signs right, I couldn't fingerspell my name even though I had practiced it who knows how many times. And I was really nervous for a long time, but I got into it. The deaf community welcomed me in and encouraged me, and they slowed down and they gestured and did everything they could to try and coax me along, and that's really part of what the deaf community is, and so it was great to really get into it now.
Sometimes it's frustrating, and yes, if the hearing person sees a deaf people before, then probably will have a sense of knowledge of how to communicate. When, say, like in a restaurant, I'll go in and I'll be trying to ask them for a paper to write on. I'll do this, and I say, gesture for a paper. And if they know what that means and that I'm deaf and they understand me, it's easier. If they don't, they've never seen a deaf, then I hate to say this word, but I'm sick of it. And I'm doing this. I can't hear. I need a piece of paper to write. I have to reiterate it again and again, over and over for the 3rd or the 4th time. And finally they'll go, okay, I see. And they'll bring it. He'll be able to write down. But in a normal, everyday situation out about, it's not 100% easy. It depends upon the hearing person, each individual's.
For me, I wouldn't have one. I used to wear a hearing aid. The cochlear implant, there seems to be some conflicting issues with that. I think that it should be the individual's decision what they might think is best, but for me, I really, I'm just not real favorable of the cochlear implant.
Yeah, I know that for years there's been a debate over this. People are against it. People say they don't care, doesn't matter. I try not to make a big deal. I don't say I support it or I oppose it. I respect the person, and that's to be their preference, their wish. Except when the parents have a child and make the decision of wanting them to have this cochlear implant, well, I wish the parent would wait a little bit. But that will be their decision and their choice.
The way that deaf people react to my cochlear implant, it differs with the person. A lot of deaf people are starting to become more and more accepting to the cochlear implant as technology evolves. It's no longer a huge backpack that you have to wear on yourself. It's now just a small little device that you can put on your ear, but it's still looked at as modifying yourself. So sometimes I still get negative reactions, but for the most part it's pretty positive now.